Okay, France. What's the deal there? Very big upset in the elections. We were heading towards a center right win. Well, no. The leftists have won most seats in the election, and now it's a very chaotic environment as Emmanuel Macron tries to put together a government. Joining us now is Chedly Belkhodja. He's a professor and researcher at Concordia, the School of Public Affairs there, and he has a research background in immigration and migration, which is helpful in this case because that was such a dominant issue in the election. Professor Belkhodja, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. So first, your initial reaction to this chaotic environment in France. First, what is going on for those that are unaware of the basics?
Well, I mean, it was quite a surprise to see a completely change in what we were expecting. France, since the European election was in making of a right wing. We were mostly talking about the possibility of the extreme right, the Front Républicain, to win a majority in this legislative election that was called by President Macron. And the surprise came in the second round, the final round, where we saw actually a very high percentage of participation, 67%. So a lot of people said that they couldn't tolerate to see maybe this extreme right party being taking power. So they voted against it, and this was possible also because of the system that permits this second round, where you only have mostly the competition between two candidates. So most of the tactic, the strategy was to block the Front Républicain.
Now, is it just me, or is there a general tendency, or maybe just, a few times that this has happened in French national politics this century so far, where the country appears poised to vote the far right into power and then sort of pulls back from the brink at the last minute? Is that, am I imagining things, or has that pattern emerged? And if so,
No,
why do you think that is?
It's been a progression where, 20 years ago, maybe, when it was not the Republican Front at the time, it was the National Front. That party, led by Jean-Marie Le Pen, did some interesting results also in some of the elections, and there was a signal where other parties would react and would use this strategy of blocking the extreme right. So it happened a few times. This time around, the first round of the election showed a very strong mobility of this party, the Front Républicain, and people were saying, well, now, is it going to work? Are we going to be capable of doing the same thing, blocking the extreme right? People were very skeptic. People were scared in a way. I was in France in the last 10 days. I just came back yesterday, and I was in Marseille, and I could feel that people were a bit, expecting this possibility of seeing the extreme right taking control of the National Assembly and trying to push their own policy, immigration, a lot of stuff on security issues also in France. It's a progression, I think. But we saw, and this is the big surprise, we saw that, the way the system works and the way people reacted, I think people said, no, we need to stop this.
About how the system in France works, the voting system, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, you have the second round happening, and was it in between those two rounds where the centrists and the leftists got together and decided that they would, not run candidates in certain ridings? Was that in between rounds? And
Yes, it's in between, but this time it was very. It was only a week between the first and the final round, so it took it was really. People reacted very rapidly. Previous legislative elections, sometimes you have 2 weeks between the two rounds, so it gives more time. But this time around, that's the way it happened. So you had some what we call in French désistement. People made the decision. So you had people voting for Macron, a centrist, even if they were from the left, but in their writing, maybe Macron, that candidate had a better chance. So you had some strange voting patterns in different writings.
Now, do you think that this is good news for Emmanuel Macron? Is it something he should be happy about? What does it portend for his future as French president and his policy agenda?
Well, I think for him, it's something that really is not creating the last 2-3 years of his mandate are going to be a bit complicated because now it's not maybe in the next weeks where France now will have the Olympic Games and people want to take their vacation. But when September comes, who's going to govern France? I think a lot of people in the Macron camp are frustrated because he called this election, because he did this move. And actually, some would say, well, he didn't. People were expecting the worst, but his movement was able to keep some seats, 168 seats. So they all play a role, a centrist role, and it depends now how they're going to be able to maybe go and approach people on the left and people on the right, but moderates. Probably more talking to the moderates, because we hear a lot of this discourse where people don't want to make any concession with extremists on the right or on the left. So Macron will try to play that game. And finally, there's also, the president of the French Republic is the head of state, and he's going to keep that role, and he could, use this as a way to show him as, on maybe on a higher stand than just the people who govern. And that's something we saw already in France when we think of other presidents who had to deal with this cohabitation with other parties.
Real quick, we're almost out of time, but I'd like your thoughts on electoral reform here in Canada, because if we play out the scenario in Canada, and let's just say or the U.S., like a far-right candidate like Donald Trump comes in, there's no second round that's gonna provoke a reflection among the population, that's gonna give a chance for the opposition to come together to form a majority. All that, the far-right's just gonna get in, right? Mm-hmm. For that reason, are you a supporter of electoral reform or the multi-rounds ranked ballot system that we see in various European countries?
Well, I think this is very European, where you have more political parties. Canada has been used to a national system where we have one round, where we have less political parties. Maybe in local elections, where people can be more connected to their parties, to the movements. I could see maybe some experiences of electoral reform, but then if you go in that direction, you can expect more differences. And what's a bit scary these days is that polarization of ideology. So if we go on the extremes all the time, then you get a system where it's difficult to work together after an election.
Chedly Belkhodja is a professor and researcher at Concordia's School of Public and Community Affairs, specialist in France, studies migration as well. Thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure.